Okay, so if we were going to talk about how we would start to do this, where we would start to do this, I would say there's a very realistic opportunity here in Florida to take a look at how do we see the correlations between what's being said, what's being done, and what's actually true, and what's really happening. So DeSantis just announced a $481 million awarded for projects aimed at water quality across Florida. And he's saying it's going to reduce the nitrogen in the waterways by more than 700,000 pounds a year. Meanwhile, also there's reports about the toxicity of the water and the phosphorus in the lake and how what's doing it to our waterways and the algae blooms that we've had and the tourism that's been affected, and speculation about the causes, not known reasons of the causes, even though the problem's been studied extensively. They talk about how 70 to 80% of the phosphorus going into the lake is coming from agriculture, not urban runoff septic tanks. Now the $480 million aims at septic tanks and springs. It does not seem to aim at agricultural industry and cattle ranching. So it's not clear yet what the correlations of the solution to the problem might be. There very well may be very good answers to all of this. There's a number of resources that are involved, some of which I was able to gather and are, people who were involved in previous legislations and people who are part of the resource team. And then there are people who are customers of tourists and people who own hotels and people who have vested interests in the wildlife in the ocean and how all of this is being tested. The legislation that went in at the beginning of around 2001 called for a lot of inspections, but didn't have the manpower to actually pull them off, so that there's been no consequences for violations of the rules, even though people themselves say that they've adhered to the policies. The level of pollution and toxicity has only increased to be even more excessive than it was back in the before the legislation. So there's all these projects that are publicly funded at the federal and state level. They're all available online. All of the data is publicly available because we, the taxpayers, are paying for it. And don't you think that they need an independent quality control system to make sure that the money is producing the right results before it's all too late and the people who would have been accountable are no longer in office? So we're saying that if we were to take the fact that there is a lot of money at stake here, that there is a pot of money that if 10% of the $600 million was allocated toward quality control, such that we can start to load up our metrics of what good performance looks like, and then line up all the resources that we can find who are either already involved or could be involved by sampling water, by monitoring dashboards, by looking at the results, by doing a review loop on what people are saying is happening before we get into arguments and finger pointing. Those people can then be engaged in a system to participate freely and as an investment of their time and energy, until we structure all the knowledge that makes the correlations and tells us what the results are and what influence that we're having. And then ultimately, those people who have tenure in the solution, contribution to the value, and participation in the system could ultimately benefit from the equity gained, which could result in quite a bit of money and security, not to mention the welfare of the state and the water and the health. But I would think that if any of the people that are around here that have a hand in making this work as efficiently as it possibly could help us to secure it, and they would be part of the system and their equity would be tracked, I wouldn't think that they would have to worry about much of their retirement. They could retire here in Florida comfortably with good water and with quite a bit of money that would be allocated to pay back the people who invested in the development of the system. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.